Hello and welcome. My name is Adrena. I am the owner and accountant here at Accounting by Adrena. And in today's video, we're going to do something a little bit different. This is the second book review that I'm doing over on YouTube. If you missed my first one, I'll go ahead and leave a link down in the description box. But I've never done this type of format before, so let me know if you like it. I thought it would just be interesting to have some of these book reviews documented on YouTube. So in this video, we're going to talk about the book called How to Say Anything to Anyone. I'm missing the plastic cover, but this was written by Shari Harley, I believe. And there you go. There's the inside of it by Shari Harley. And this book was actually recommended to me by another entrepreneur that is in the virtual space. And I couldn't be more grateful, to be honest. Now, when I first read this, I think it was back in 2018 or 2019. And I wish I had read this before I even entered the workforce, because I love how practical this book is, and she teaches exactly what to say within certain situations and circumstances. She literally gives examples of what you can say, of what you can literally say. And I love the practicality of that book. I love how it's just straightforward and to the point. I think for me, too many times I have felt stumped by trying to figure out the most effective way to communicate with others, especially in an office type setting where politics gets lost on me. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that way, but if you also feel that way, give me a thumbs up on this video. For me, I feel like the best way to communicate is direct and honest communication. And I didn't realize that there were politics at play when I first entered the workforce. I just felt like, why not be myself? Why not just be who I am? I want to quote a podcast. It was called Freakonomics. And in that podcast, they were talking about kind of office politics. They say, and going back to our earlier conversation, most human connection and gatherings suffer more from unhealthy peace than from unhealthy conflict. So I don't know if I am just not the norm here, and people just generally shy away from having these types of direct and honest conversations about how they feel about their work in particular. So just to give you kind of an example, an idea, over the past, I don't know, 15 years of my professional experience of working in an office, I have spoken up verbally about my salary experience and knowledge within my field to my direct supervisors, and in most cases to the owner, president, or CFO of the firm. I have been vocal about how I was feeling with particular employees and direct reports, and I have managed up to my direct supervisors and or managers. Now, please know that I did not say all of these conversations were successful. I definitely had to drag myself through these conversations, high anxiety, high stress type of situations, and not all of them were in my favor. So I had to do some pretty challenging soul searching and take some big risks and leaps of faith when it came to those hard conversations. But I am more grateful to having those hard conversations than not, looking back at it now. And I may be the exception to the rule here, but I think what I was missing in those conversations were how to be more effective in my communication, as well as not take these conversations personally. I had to learn at a very pivotal point in my professional career that I had to, in these types of conversations, I had to focus on the issue as a standalone problem and as not connected to myself, because when I felt like that issue was connected to myself, I would take things so personally and I would get so distraught over it. And that has downward spiral written all over it. And so if I had this type of really practical information on how to say anything to anyone, I think I would have been a lot more successful in these conversations. Now, that's not to say that I don't have stressful and challenging conversations nowadays, they're just a little bit differently. So I may even return back to like rereading this book to get some more practical and valuable insight, and specifically how to say things in certain contexts. And like I've definitely had some really challenging conversations in my business, and that is definitely the main piece of advice that I can give to you, is to make sure that you remove yourself from the issue rather than saying the issue and you are one, because then that helps you put that boundary to protect your feelings and to make sure that you're not as stressed or anxious going through those conversations. All right, let's get back to the book. I'm going to give you my top 3 takeaways that I found super useful. And I'm also going to quote the book, but I'm not going to like give you the whole book. I'm just going to quote the book in its context of the 3 takeaways that I think are going to be super useful. So the first takeaway is it's okay to ask questions. I feel like there are way too many times that people generally feel like they're not allowed to ask a question to their direct supervisor or any authority over them. On page 72, it says, ask what your manager expects and don't wait to be told. And this kind of goes back to managing up, like if you are kind of layered within the organization, there are going to be times where you need to manage the person or the conversation above you because they're probably focused on something else above them, so like in order for you to do your job most effectively, there are certain things that you can do. And one of those main things is going back to asking questions. I love the fact that, if a manager gives you an assignment, you come back to them, not only restate exactly what the assignment is, but ask any questions that could potentially derail you, thinking through kind of like optional scenarios. Like if X happens, then what do I do for this? So here's a couple of questions that the book tells you that you can ask. What is working for you about my management style? What do you wish I would do more? What would you like me to start, stop, and continue doing? And I feel like those questions are going to be super practical for you because those will help you begin conversations with your manager or whoever's above you, your direct supervisor. And those are going to be the conversations that you're going to go back to time and time again. All right. Now, the second one is a little bit like on the funny side, but also very true, especially if you work in an office type setting, and that is to only gossip to your cat. And I just thought that was so funny and also so true. The advice that the author gives in this context is found on page 98. And it says, people will never stop gossiping. It's one of those human things. We all do it and we aren't going to quit. The best we can hope for is to reduce the amount of time we spend talking about other people behind their backs. So I think the important thing, to draw out of this is then in the next paragraph, she says that venting with someone on a level below you is gossip and puts the other person in an awkward position. So I'd prefer you to take your conversation out of your office and tell your spouse, friends outside of work. You can also talk to someone at that same level as you or the one above you. And then she ends this part by saying, or better yet, your cat, who will never violate a confidence. I know that I have personally done a lot of gossip in office settings, and it's not necessarily relatable to me at the moment as working from home, but I definitely know that I was drawn into conversations that definitely didn't involve me and that were based off of gossip. And so it's just good to know and good to be aware of, we're all going to do it. We're all going to vent or get advice from people, throughout our days and our weeks. But it's also important to not put someone in an awkward position or kind of in a comparable position for them. All right. Now, the third point is to provide feedback. So I absolutely love this point. It seems like there's just not enough feedback happening in order to affect change. And I feel like a lot of that comes back to people being afraid of hurting other people's feelings. And I think we can provide feedback by being open and honest, going back to that direct communication and being open and honest with each other. In the book on page 133, she says, the purpose of feedback is to shift or reinforce behavior. When you provide someone with feedback, it helps if the person can clearly remember the situation you're talking about. If you want to address an issue that happened several weeks or months ago, people might not remember the situation and you will appear to be someone who holds a grudge. Feedback can be a powerful tool that you can use within the office and outside of the office. And I definitely feel like I try to keep myself open to feedback from other people and also provide feedback to other people. And so here are 3 tips on providing feedback. So the first tip from the book is to provide feedback within 24 hours to no later than a week from the incident. The second one is to provide feedback with courage and compassion so that you have both a listening ear with an open heart. And the third point is to provide feedback in person and in private to keep the confidence and trust moving forward. Now, obviously, these are within the context of an office setting where you are working in person. And nowadays, I think there's a little complexity with having Zoom meetings and working remotely and things like that. But definitely do your best to keep it in person, private. And I think that's probably my main tips and my main takeaways is so that you can keep confidence and trust moving forward. All right, that's all I have for you today. If you guys have any comments, thoughts, questions, feedback, I would love to hear it down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you are aware of my next book review, which is actually going to be on a book called Do It Scared. And check out my newsletter. I'll leave a link below in the description box, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Have a good one, friends.